Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Racing Roundtable. I'm your host, Blaze Bowman. Evidently, I'm not Ashley. I've been pulled in off the AE list. We got Ashley on some nice, well-deserved PTO, freshening up out there on the farm in Colorado. Joined this week with, of course, our elder statesman, Vance Hansen and Darren Zacali, to go over a few things with us from over the weekend. The first will be the Iroquois versus the Pocahontas Stakes and our thoughts on that. Of course, we must touch on the next coming of modern games. Did we see that at the Woodbine Mile with Master of Sea's performance for Charlie Appleby? And of course, what else caught our eye over the weekend? Go ahead, and I'll start off with Vance Hansen to kick off our discussion. We'll go with the ladies first. Vance, your thoughts on the Pocahontas results?
Yeah, as far as the Iroquois and the Pocahontas, I thought the Pocahontas is going to figure to have larger implications than the Iroquois. Vivi's Dream already had a terrific form line going into the Pocahontas via Brightwork, who went on to win a couple of graded stakes over the summer at Saratoga. And I thought her 8 3/4 length procession into the winner's circle of the Pocahontas really underscored how deep this juvenile filly division appears to be going into the Breeders' Cup in November. Now, in contrast, I thought West Saratoga's upset win in the Iroquois was largely a result of the speed collapsing. They came home very slow, and the final time was 4/5 of a second slower than the Pocahontas was. And the fact that West Saratoga needed 5 starts to break his maiden, he had also lost twice in so-called auction maidens. Just seems to me that the Iroquois on the Bear result is not going to have much implication moving forward. Darren, what did you think of the 2 races?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think the 2 races are kind of a microcosm of the 2 divisions that we've seen so far in some of these big races. The hopeful versus the spinaway. I had a very similar take on comparing those two. The hopeful was a race that really didn't thrill me too much. I thought the spinaway was a better race that day for the juvenile fillies, and has kind of become a bit of a theme that I think the 2-year-old fillies at this point, just covering all different elements of the spectrum, have seemed to be better than the colts are. This race is another example of that. The Iroquois, like Vance mentioned, was a race that completely fell apart. The final quarter was over 27 seconds. Always Be Mickey would have destroyed that field by about 10 lengths in the final quarter mile. So I thought Vance's his take on that, and the race completely collapsing. The winner obviously tripped out that day. Whereas when you looked at Vivi's Dream, she was a filly that kind of put herself into the race. She was shuffled back a little bit early. She was nearly last coming out of the mile chute, tugged her way up, got herself in good striking position, kind of let the first couple of run off there a little bit to a 45 and change half, put herself in the race all on her own, and really did all the running herself. Whereas the winner of the Iroquois was more of a product of circumstance, and the race collapsing. It was kind of the right horse in the right time. So couldn't agree more with Vance. And I think it's just a bigger theme that as of this point, these 2-year-old fillies seem to be the better than the colts. Doesn't necessarily have to turn out that way next year, but right now they certainly seem to be a bit more precocious, Blaze.
Yeah, definitely have to agree with the two of you. Insight was point on. I'm going with the girls are maturing faster than boys at this 2-year-old stage. Vivi's Dream was impressive. Jockey Brian Hernandez was quoted saying it was real easy for her. She's ready to go longer. It seemed like she was on cruise control. She sat off the pace. She came home at a very nice clip. And I think Vivi's Dream is the one to watch. West Saratoga, I'm happy for Larry. $11,000 purchase, son of an exaggerator. You look back at anything exaggerator's progeny recently. We got Skippy Longstocking. There's a shout out for Ashley. She's not here with us this week, but she's a big Skippy fan. Other than that, there just hasn't been much with exaggerator progeny, as well as the bottom side of the dam. Looking at that Uncle Mo dam, Mo Wicked. She is an unraced mare. I don't see much there. So I understand she likes Churchill. She likes the distance. And just as a note for everybody, this distance was turned back to a mile. It was a mile and a 16th. So that's something to take into consideration. This was just a one-turn mile at Churchill. So, again, I'm happy for Larry. I'm happy for Harry, the owner. But also heard that not much was taken out of the horse. He was bucking in his stall, Larry said, on Sunday. Got some quotes from him. And the horse seemed like nothing was wrong. So I don't think much there from West Saratoga, but again, bet against me. But we'll see in the Breeders' Futurity is his likely next step at Keeneland. Moving on, Masters of the Sea. We had a stellar performance out there at Woodbine in the Woodbine Mile for the Charlie Appleby trainee. I'll go ahead and kick it over to you, Vance, for your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, Master of the Seas is a horse I've always held in high regard. He was actually my top selection in the 2021 edition of the 2000 Guineas at Newmarket, and he got beat a dirty nose that day, and I'm still kind of peeved about that. And he was also my play in that year's Breeders' Cup Mile at Del Mar when he was unexpectedly scratched right before the start. So he's kind of a horse I've been kind of waiting to pounce at the right price. We didn't get that in the Woodbine Mile. It was odds on there. But since those two races that I mentioned, the Breeders' Cup Mile and the 2000 Guineas in 2021, Master of the Seas has been gelded, and trainer Charlie Appleby obviously has him in career best form at the moment. Now, one thing he hasn't consistently done over the last couple of seasons in Europe compared to modern games is that he hasn't been facing the best milers over there. Now, I think he's on his best day. I think Master of the Seas is probably as good as the top milers over there right now. But until we actually see him compete against them in the Breeders' Cup Mile at Santa Anita, we're not going to be really sure. So whether Master of the Seas lives up to modern games' standard that he set last year will largely depend on who else from Europe shows up in the mile. And we've got really several tough nuts to crack potentially. We've got Kinross, who's in the midst of a nice winning streak over in Europe. He narrowly missed in last year's mile after a tough trip. He was a tough trip third against modern games. We have the top 3-year-old filly Tahira, who's also on a nice win streak. But she hasn't faced males yet. We'll find out how good she is possibly in the mile. And then, of course, Coolmore could direct Paddington to the mile. We'll see. I think he might have one more start in Europe beforehand. But yeah, Master of the Seas is going to have some tough competition from Europe in the Breeders' Cup Mile. I think he has the potential to do well against them, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Over to you, Darren.
Yeah, no, listen, I couldn't agree more. It follows a theme. Appleby obviously used this race with modern games. Charlie's not having the same level of success from a win percentage this year as he had in years past. But I mean, this just follows the general theme that, when a European horse comes over here, more often than not, they're just better than American turf winners. And, no knock to Cheryl Spite, who's a nice horse. But when Cheryl Spite is probably, the best that horse is going to run into in a race like the Woodbine Mile, he's going to be able to exert his class. And the American turf milers, for the most part, are just not going to be up to the Europeans. And like Vance was saying, and we've seen this happen time and time again, when a horse comes over here who's not necessarily facing the best overseas or is losing to the best overseas, and then they come over here and they just power away from the best that we have to offer, doesn't usually loom well or bode well for the American runners come the Breeders' Cup Mile. Now, how this horse stacks up against the other Europeans that come over, we'll just have to wait and see. It's certainly possible that since he's been gelded, as Vance alluded to, that he's just a better horse right now than he's been, gets a start over here. Appleby has never been a stranger to kind of shipping these horses back and forth. He certainly did that with modern games. But whether this horse is Modern Games 2.0, you have to remember that horse would go over to Europe, and he was also a juggernaut over there. This horse has not necessarily gotten to that level yet. He's beaten what we had in the Woodbine Mile. But as Vance said, we'll see come Breeders' Cup time if he can take on the best of Europe. But look, the Americans, all this tells you is that when it comes to the Breeders' Cup, the mile, the turf races, especially for the older horses, they're going to have more than their hands full, which has become a reoccurring theme in recent years. And I don't expect it to change anytime soon, Blaze.
All right. I agree with you both there. I do see modern games Master of the Seas not live up to the hype that Modern Games was, and unfortunately is retired. The horse is being shipped back tomorrow, Wednesday. We're recording this on Tuesday. He'll be shipped back to his home across the seas, and they will judge whether this horse will come out to Santa Anita for the Breeders' Cup. But again, I think the only thing going against this horse is maybe a bad gate, break. But other than that, I'm going to root for Casa Creed going against him, but I really don't think Master of the Seas is going to have much of a competition over here. Looking
I'll just
ahead.
add one thing, Blaze, real quick. When you get to the Breeders' Cup, let value be your guy with a horse like this, because an Appleby Godolphin horse that he's come over and won with Modern Games, people are just going to look at that and bet, because Appleby horses get bet here all the time and might not realize some of the other competition that's coming over. This horse for 3-1 in the Breeders' Cup Mile, you could potentially find value lying elsewhere with some of the other European invaders. So I would just say pay close attention to that.
Yeah, and with that note, I would really like to see the Aga Khan stud runner Tahira that Vance just mentioned. I think that's a good shot if she can go against the boys. That would be a value play for me. And again, I will root for Casa Creed, even though it's going to be a tough one. Going on to what else caught our eye. I guess both Darren and Vance, you guys kind of on the same wavelength. So Vance, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I thought She Feels Pretty, the 2-year-old filly that won the Talma at Woodbine, was the standout performance on North America for me over the weekend. She just had enough ground to work with when she took her debut at Ellis Park, going 5.5 furlongs by a neck, but she really excelled in the 1 mile in the Talma at Woodbine, unleashing a powerful stalk and pounce rally under John Velasquez, and she just won with absolute authority like a budding star for owners Roy and Gretchen Jackson. So, and she also wound up running the mile faster than the boys did in the summer stakes just an hour earlier. So, I mean, off of that performance, and we don't know exactly who's going to point who's going to come from Europe for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. That's usually something that's really not coming into focus until about 2 weeks out. But undoubtedly, I think She Feels Pretty is going to be one of the top selections and betting choices in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. And she is a daughter of Breeders' Cup winner, mile winner Kara Kantai, who won the mile at Santa Anita too. So maybe she might inherit some love for that grass course going into Southern California in a little while. Darren, what else do you have to add about her?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, more of the fillies being faster than the colts. We actually saw it the previous week. Kentucky Downs Juvenile Fillies was over 2 seconds faster than the Kentucky Downs Juvenile. You see it here again with the Natalma and the Summer Stakes. The 2-year-old filly turf division is extremely deep. And this race in particular was deep because you had horses who were scratched out of the PG Johnson, which came off the turf a couple of weeks earlier, which is why you ended up with 15 horses here. So you had a big field. You had a lot of talent in the field. This horse looked like a winner every step of the way, despite how many horses were in the race. She put herself in position. She was under a stone cold hand ride. She exploded in the stretch. Like Van said, she went faster than the colts. Caraconte is producing winners on the turf left and right. He's got 2-year-old fillies winning left and right on the grass as well. The juvenile fillies turf and the juvenile turf, sometimes Europeans do come over to win, but this is kind of the area where you can see the Americans could potentially have an edge, because 2-year-olds in America can be a bit more precocious in training than the 2-year-olds are in Europe. So sometimes, or more often than not, we do see when you line up the Europeans versus the Americans in the juvenile races, the Americans can hold their own. And I think this is a filly that has just a world of talent, a world of upside, could be a potential budding superstar. And I'm really excited to see where she goes from here. But there is nothing not to like about her coming out of the race. It was absolutely sensational.
Yeah, great points by both of you. Was at Churchill on Saturday, and I heard some buzz going on down the way over by the first what do we call that now? The First Turn Club. And Sherry DeVoe was on site watching that race from Woodbine, and she was hooting and hollering. I wish I would have ran over there with my phone and got it on video, but if someone has it, please share it on social, because it was really nice to see Sherry DeVoe there just going nuts. My what else is going to be pretty easy, spot on here. Mr. Churchill Downs, Bango. Bango gets his 14th career win. He's 11 for 19 at Churchill Downs and ties the record for most wins at Churchill. Did have a win in the Kelly's Landing when the Churchill meet was moved to Ellis Park. I guess there's an asterisk next to that. But again, the 6-year-old Bango, trained by Greg Foley, just one of the more popular barns here in the 502 at Louisville. He's done a great job working with his owners of Bango, Fred and Debbie Schwartz. Deserve credit as well for giving Greg control, as well as his son, Travis and Alex, to let the horse rest in the winters, take 6 weeks off during the racing season. If this horse was owned by some other bigger syndicates or groups, he would have been running in almost every other grade 1, grade 2 that we have across the country. But again, shout out to the Schwartzes for giving Greg the patience and the the scheduling of races. So it'd be nice to see Bango come back and actually get the record himself with 12 wins underneath the TwinSpires come November. That would be great. And my one other tidbit I would like to bring up is that favorites have not been winning as much this first week at Churchill. I believe we're just about shy of 29%. Favorites winning, an average $2 win bet is paying somewhere around $19. We had some big price horses. We had an $85 to $185 winner with Get Twisted the other day. So there's definitely some value to be had at this short abbreviated Churchill September meet. Anything else from you guys?
I think we covered it.
All right, you covered it all. So thanks for letting me be your host, putting up with me. Can't wait till Ashley gets back, so I can go back to the also eligible list on this and look ahead to the jury coming up on Thursday. We'll have a big look ahead. Of course, we got the Parks racing there. We got Pennsylvania Derby, Cotillion. Darren, anything you looking forward to for the weekend?
Yeah, well, I mean, put on my harness hat. We got Little Brown Jug Week coming up. They got 3 eliminations on Thursday. I know it's a harness race, but it's a part of Americana. It's a really cool experience. The horses race twice in the same day, which is not something you really see very often anymore. So it's a lot of fun. It's exciting, and obviously you can bet all the action with us at TwinSpires. So I'm definitely looking forward to Jug Day, one of my favorite days of the year.
Excellent. All right. Until then, we'll see you next time on The Jury.